Just waiting for 12 o'clock noon. Hey, Patty, nice to see you. Welcome, everyone. We will start in about 30 seconds. Welcome. Welcome to today's episode. Let's see.
It's 11:59.
Almost. I hope you guys are well. Let me know where you are logging on from. It is 12 noon Pacific, so it's time to start the show. Happy Saturday, everyone. Welcome to the DoughDr. I'm your host and baking expert, Chef Colette, and today we've got a lot to talk about. All right, so now let's get started with a couple announcements. First announcement, next Monday, October 3rd, I'm going to be live at 2 o'clock Central demoing pumpkin macarons on craftsy.com. If you are a Craftsy member and get their emails, you will get an email alert about that live demo. And let's see what else is going on. You know what? That's about it for right now, but I wanted to give that announcement right off the top because you know we get crushed at the end and I forget. All right, listen, if you have burning baking questions, well, please don't burn your baking. I know you don't. Drop them into the comments. I've got one great question to start. And that question came out of our poll on Wednesday. I posted a poll on Wednesday on Instagram about what are your favorite fall flavors. I asked, was it pumpkin? Was it warm fall spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, or ginger? Or was it apples? Do apples make your baking heart race this time of year? Well, the winner was warm spices. And I was really a little bit surprised, but actually not really. So spices came in first, like cinnamon and nutmeg and all that lovely earthy warmth that just perfumes our fall baking. 2 was pumpkin, and 3, like a distant third, I was shocked, apples. So for you audience, please, put in the comment, if you missed our poll on Wednesday, let's take a poll here. What are your favorite fall flavors? And let's see by the end of the show if warm spices wins right here live on the show, or maybe it's apple, or maybe it's pumpkin. So, Salty Sweet Bakes wrote in on the poll and she said, can you talk about what type of pumpkin is good for baking? Oh yeah. I could talk a long time about what kind of pumpkin is good for baking. Let's break that down. And if you are a fresh pumpkin baker, well, what I mean to say, if you always use fresh pumpkin and make your own pumpkin puree for your pumpkin pies and pumpkin desserts, please let us know in the comments below. Okay, let's just do a quick recap. Patty is saying she likes all 3, pumpkin, apple, and cinnamon. And then I've got pumpkin and warm spices. I know they kind of go together. And then Emerald Cupcake Los Angeles, who I have to give a shout out. Audience, you've got to check out her post for her gorgeous pumpkin shortbread cookies. Emerald Cupcake Los Angeles, those were off the charts. Beautiful work. So please, everyone, support each other and follow each other, and just, yes, let's just build this baking community. All right, so Salty Sweet Bakes, who I have to give a shout out to, posted some gorgeous challahs. I believe that was yesterday. Really, really pretty. Check those out too. Now, seriously, I am serious. Tag me in your bakes and I'll give you a shout out on the show. Because, we kind of bake in a vacuum. Well, kind of an Instagram vacuum or a social media vacuum. But it's nice to have some real baking friends that can also be aware of your work, as opposed to just, we kind of just send stuff out there, right? And I know I can just speak for myself. I so appreciate all the likes and the comments. You guys keep me going. You have no idea. So thank you. All right, let's get back to Salty Sweet Bake's question about what pumpkin is best for baking. And that's a lot of stress on the baking, because we can be a little more relaxed about the pumpkin we choose for cooking. All right? Okay, pumpkins for baking. They have a generic label that normally, in like regular supermarkets, they'll be labeled sugar pumpkins, sometimes sugar baby pumpkins, just to make them even more, it's kind of a sexy name for a pumpkin, sugar baby. And then pie pumpkins, a little bit more pedestrian, that pie pumpkin. Those are the best ones for baking. Now more specifically, like if we get super botanic, they'll be like, they can be called Cinderella pumpkins or fairy tale pumpkins. However, here's what you need to know, my fresh pumpkin bakers. You do not want to choose a pumpkin that is over 8 pounds. As a matter of fact, try to choose small ones, because the flesh will be more compact and they will be easier to handle. Because the best way to cook pumpkin for pumpkin puree that we would use for our pies, or any pumpkin dessert that we might make, is to bake it, or we're at 400 degrees when we cook our pumpkin, so we're really on that baking, roasting, we're walking that line. We're walking that line between baking and roasting. In my mind, I feel we're well into roasting when we're at 425 or higher. I will learn to talk today, I promise, bakers. But at that 400, we are close. So here's how we have to prepare our pumpkin. Well, you want to wash them. That's really important. But we are not going to peel them. This is not some butternut squash we're dealing with. This is a hard, rinded vegetable. We're not going to mess around. I mean, if you've ever tried to deal with, and I know you have, an acorn squash and chop that sucker in half, well, a pumpkin is a squash on steroids. So 4 pounds, and then what you want to do is you want to take your baking tray, and I really recommend line it with parchment or aluminum foil. We know parchment's more sustainable, but what we're trying to do is protect our pan, and we also don't want the pumpkin to stick to the pan. I'm not a huge fan of baking directly on metal. I know we do that sometimes, metal sheet pans, but I digress. So what you want to do is film just a very light oil the parchment paper or the aluminum foil. I wouldn't use spray here. Spray has stuff that once it is exposed to high temperatures, it just gets nasty. So just a little bit of oil. You could even use a brush. Then you're going to cut that pumpkin in half, or have somebody do it for you. You're going to scoop out those seeds, and then what I really recommend, oh, you're going to love this, it's so retro. Wait for it. You are going to dig in your drawer like I just did, and you're going to pull out a grapefruit spoon. Now, these are so vintage, it's not even funny. But there are people out there who eat grapefruit, at least, well, here in California, well, in Southern California, they grow pretty readily. So there's people who, at least in wintertime, eat grapefruit every day. So these grapefruit spoons are around. And these suckers are great for getting seeds out of squash and pumpkin. And if you're someone who likes to de-seed their cucumbers, these are great. So you're going to dig for your grapefruit spoon, and the next time you're in the supermarket or you're in the dollar store, you're going to pick one up so you have it. When I was working in kitchens, I always had one in my toolkit. They're just so useful. Scrape, 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 scrape. And then you're just going to put that scraped half pumpkin onto your baking tray, slide it in your 400-degree oven, and it usually takes, I would check it in 45 minutes, but it can take as long as an hour. A cake tester or a paring knife, stab it. It should feel tender, not soft. And then you can go ahead, let it cool, and then puree the flesh in a food processor. Your pureed pumpkin will keep in the refrigerator for 5 to 7 days, and frozen in an airtight container. Pack it in there, so there's not a lot of space for ice crystals to form, and it will keep for 2 months in your freezer. All right? Now the big old jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, they are not so great for baking. And I did promise I'd mention cooking, because there's some marvelous dishes we can make with cooked pumpkin, pumpkin risotto, we can make pumpkin ravioli, so many, oh my God, just so many things. Then the regular pumpkins, you know, you can use those more for cooking. We're not so concerned with water content, because when we cook something, we have more control to, you know, in the cooking process, to reduce any excess water out of our pumpkin. All right, do I have any pumpkin questions in the comments? Nope. All right, you can feel free to add them, because we can always go back to pumpkins. Oh, BTW, don't forget to roast those seeds. What you're going to do is you're going to take those pumpkin seeds, you're going to rinse them, you're going to pat them dry, you're going to put them in a bowl, a little bit of your favorite oil, and whatever spices that you like. They could be savory. You could do a pumpkin spice pumpkin seed if you felt like it. Toss it, put it on a baking tray. Now seeds roast at 300 degrees, 100 degrees lower than our flesh, and you're gonna stir them every 10 minutes until they get to exactly where you like them. And I was shocked when I did my research. Did you know that pumpkin seeds are full of protein, magnesium, and they've got iron in them too? So definitely a credible snack, and actually, bakers, a lovely garnish if you're making pumpkin cookies or pumpkin muffins. And as a matter of fact, the Craftsy pumpkin that I am demoing on the 3rd on Craftsy Live is half pumpkin seeds. So yeah, shout out for pumpkin seeds. That just makes those macarons a little bit more nutritious. Whoever thought a macaron could be nutritious? I thought they were just purely for pleasure. All right, so what else? I cannot go any further about pumpkin. I can't stop talking about pumpkin until I tell you a few factoids about canned pumpkin. Okay? Canned pumpkin, number 1, is perfectly fine. Number 2, there can be other ingredients in canned pumpkin. I just felt you guys get really surprised, like, oh my God, what could they put in pumpkin? Well, it's nothing evil, but the FDA is a little loosey-goosey about what is pumpkin and what is not pumpkin. And there are 2 varieties of winter squash that the FDA is perfectly comfortable calling pumpkin. So how do we get around that? By Libby's. You know, remember Libby's, Libby's, Libby's on the label, label, label. Yes, you know the cans. If they're not in your local supermarket, they're going to be there in a few, probably by the end of this week. Though they did say, no, that's cranberries. I did read there's going to be a canned cranberry sauce shortage. So you might want to pick that up when you see it. Anyway, I digress. So canned pumpkin, unless it's the Libby's brand, could be part winter squash, which is not a terrible thing. You can make delicious pies out of squash, but now you know. Now Libby's developed a strain of pumpkin called a Dickinson pumpkin specifically for their product. They developed the strain of pumpkin to be just like least amount of water, perfect color. You know when those botanists get together, like how crazy they get. They were developed for really good, strong pumpkin flavor as well. So that's 100% pumpkin, the Libby's product. And I have to say, I'm not a big fan of wrestling fresh pumpkin. And as someone who often had to bake, you know, a couple hundred pies for Thanksgiving, Libby's pumpkin is a pretty good product. So don't feel you have to roast fresh pumpkin to really like bring it for your fall desserts and your holiday baking. But if you want to, you're going to look for pie pumpkins and sugar pumpkins or sugar baby pumpkins. All right, everyone, any questions on that? Drop them in the comments. Okay, I think that's everything for now. A little bit of fall baking prep before we go on to demo. And the subject for demo came from my Craftsy class, Classic Croissants, Modern Techniques, and we're going to get to that in a second, all right? So, one thing I recommend to get ready for your fall and holiday baking might be a great thing to do this weekend. Get in your baker's pantry and weed out any old spices, anything that's, you know, over 6 months old, 8 months old. You know, open the top. Does it smell like, whoo, oh, I lost my headband. That's funny. Then, like, the cinnamon just hits you in the face. Well, then you're good to go. But if you open your spices and they're kind of like, meh, well, maybe it's time to compost the contents, recycle that container, and get yourself some fresh spices. And by the way, you may have noticed that blended pumpkin spice is very seasonal. I was looking for some to test the demo recipe for Craftsy back in August, and I couldn't find it. I ended up making my own, which isn't hard, but it's nice to have that little jar of pumpkin spice. Kind of sets the tone for your fall and holiday baking. So pick that up if you see it. And again, smell your spices, make sure everything's fresh and tickety-boo. Maybe make a list, because one thing that happens right about now is sugar, spices, flour, butter. It's all going to start to go on sale, so you can get your pantry organized and set up for your holiday baking. So you can jump into your projects without having to stop and go to the store, because that is a major, major drag. That's the way I wish I could show you my baker's pantry, because it is gorgeous. I have it organized beautifully so that I can walk in here, this teeny tiny kitchen that I film from, and I can make just about anything that I want to bake. So I wanted to pass that on to you. And very last setup thing, one thing I'm always talking about is parchment paper. This is a box of parchment paper, just really kind of simple parchment paper, the kind of parchment paper you find at the dollar store or at a restaurant supply. And I had mentioned this before. And also Reynolds Wrap sells parchment paper on the roll that actually has lines and grids, and that stuff is friggin' awesome, except it's on the roll. And when you're trying to set yourself up and do your mise en place, read through your recipe, really get into enjoying your baking, this is a downer. It is not fun to wrestle parchment off a roll. So what I do in a non-baking session, I will cut from the roll my sheets that fit my half sheet pans. And then what I do is I line them in, see? One of these yields about, I paid $1 for this, and I got 22 sheets of parchment paper out of it. And then I just stack baking trays on top of it and put them in the cupboard where I keep my baking trays. Anyway, you might try that. You can always order flat parchment paper from Amazon, but if you forget and you end up with roll parchment paper, grab your scissors, grab a ruler, grab a pan, give yourself 10 minutes, you'll have a stash of parchment paper and you won't have to think about it. That's my hot tip for today. All right, now let's get to demo. Bakers, look at this. Is this like so cool? This is an Italian laminated dough called a cremona, all right? And Cremona is a city in Italy. It's in Lombardy, so it's in northern Italy, kind of by Piacenza, which is a great, amazing food town. And Cremona is where they make the violins. If you ever saw that great movie from the 90s, The Red Violin, part of it was filmed in Cremona. Anyway, look at how gorgeous this is. This would be a fabulous, if you have an event or a dinner, this would be a great centerpiece bread. But, especially for those of them, easy to make. Like, I was gobsmacked because we don't have to make a formal butter block. We use melted fat to laminate. Now, bakers, in Cremona, and this bread dates back to medieval times, they use lard. And they use lard because in this part of Italy, they have gorgeous pigs and prosciutto, and for those of you who are either from there, who live there, or who have been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Here, not so much. Plus, we're all trying to eat a little bit lighter, and we're watching our cholesterol. I, for one, just got mine down by 60 points, so I really am not feeling lard. So I thought to myself, what could I do to make this, take this classic Cremona and make it a little bit more friendly? All right? Okay, I got it. Wait for it. Half butter, half olive oil, and then garlic. Make a garlic infusion infuse garlic in the butter and oil and brush that on the dough. And it is so good. And then, I'm sure this is a travesty, but we could take it next level and not only do the butter, oil, and garlic, but laminate a little fresh grated Parmesan cheese into our Cremona. All right? So, this recipe is going to go live on the website tomorrow, and then it will be, I'll also have it for Monday's Instagram post. but let me show you. And it's like a horseshoe shape. It's like you see it, it's like a fringed horseshoe. So for demo, I'm going to shape it in front of you. I have one, so just like croissant, the dough is mixed, it bulk ferments, like it rises till it, it's doubled, and then it's rolled out to a rectangle, brushed with the garlic and butter, and then if you want, Parmesan cheese, and then it's folded like a letter. You repeat that 3 times, and then you let it rest a little while because all that rolling gets the gluten really tight. And then, once it's rested about 20 minutes, like it's done in my refrigerator right now, then we shape it. And that's what I want to show you live. All right? So, Cremona. It's easy to remember. Okay, so here it is 100% finished right here. Now I'm actually going to spin my board because I want you to be able to see. And I know we talk about sustainable baking. I use this same plastic wrap throughout this whole process for both of these loaves. It's just about, I got 2 uses out of it, bakers, 2 uses out of it. All right, when you go to shape this, you want to have your baking tray close by. And oh my goodness, if you make the Cremona, please, please tag me. I gotta see them. This was just so exciting. And this came from our baker, Kathy, through Craftsy. She is a professional baker, and someone walked in and asked her, can you make a Cremona? And she's like, what is a Cremona? So she messaged me, and I started researching, and here we are, bakers. You guys drive this show, and I love it. All right, so now, and it's cold. Remember, no matter what the laminated dough is, if we shape cold, we're set up for success. Just a little bit of flour. I wish you were here so I could have you feel this dough. It is gorgeous. And it uses bread flour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it 8 inches tall. Okay? Then I'm going to flip it toward you guys. Make sure it's not sticking. I'm going to grab my pastry rulers. And remember, you can use yardsticks cut in half. They work great because that right there is a standard 1/4 inch. Just watch out for splinters. Sand these down. Okay, because the splinters are a drag. All right. You can also buy pastry rulers from Amazon. There's a Pastry Chef Central has them. They're all over the internet. Or if you're a DIY person, you can get some crafty dowels or whatever these are called, and you can make your own. Okay, so I'm shaping, so I want to make sure I'm a 1/4 inch thick, and I'm going to roll. I'm rolling to you guys. I love the rulers because they make tracks for the dough. And for my cookie bakers, I'm sure you're doing this too. Okay, so now again we are shaping. So I'm about 20 inches, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We're not at the Coupe de Monde, you guys. But we do want to keep the integrity of the rectangle. All right? And then the next thing, This is my butter and my garlic. I'm going to brush this here. And I'm going to do the cheesy version. So you're going to see both versions on the website. And it's not a ton. It's just, you know, la la la. And I fresh grated this. But you could use store-bought in the carton. No, that's totally fine. Okay. So this is what's cool here. So we're going to look. We've got this. We're going to go to this. So what's going to happen is I'm going to fold this over, and it's going to have like an inch. Can you guys see that there's an inch right here? Our little butter and cheese area is exposed. Now I'm going to shift things because I'm going to move it right now. Okay? And we're going to shape it into that. Let me shape. I'm so sorry. Let me work to camera so you guys see what it is that I am doing. Okay? So it looks like a horseshoe, and you know, it can almost connect. There is not a lot out there about the Cremona. I had to have the public library find me a book from 2009, and that's where I got more information about the Cremona. So maybe our post, our class, will become the internet's go-to about how to make this bread, you know, when you're not in Cremona. All right, so here's our horseshoe. And if you look, bakers, it's got this kind of interesting fringe. And I bet there was a medallion, or this is somehow significant. I think I saw Chef Daniel in the audience. He may know. He's from Milan, which is not far from Cremona. All right. Now, scissors are the way to go. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to cut. I'm going to show you two ways to do this. You can cut all the way through to the top layer, like this, okay? And it's quick. It's not fussy. It works. A lot of, you know, the Argentina guy, he's like, use a razor blade or a sharp knife. But those of you who have silpats, you know I can't do that because I would destroy my silpat. So I'm using scissors. Plus, I think it's safer. If you wanted to bake this on the back of the sheet pan, that might be smart. I wasn't that smart right now, but that's okay. So you can cut through both layers to make this funky fringe, or you can be fussier, and if you see, I did the bottom layer, boom, 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 and then the top layer, I made it like so it looked like it was every other space, just to give it a little bit more visual interest. All right, so now I'm going to cover this. It's really warm here in Los Angeles today. We're going to have another heat wave, I've been told. So I'm just going to cover it. Going to get as much mileage out of this plastic wrap as I can. And this is going to sit for 45 minutes. It'll get puffy and it'll look fuller. It's not going to double in size. Remember, bakers, just your yeasted dough principles. When we make a dough and we let it rise, that first rise, that's where we're looking for the double. But when we are letting our shaped product rise, it's not that extreme. We're looking for a little bit of a lift, and the texture will become marshmallowy. I have to make that distinction because there's not always the most credible information out there on the oracle that we know as the internet or Google. So I just want to be clear about that. So after 45 minutes, and I'll preheat the oven to 400 degrees, before it goes into the oven, I will brush it one more time with the garlic, oil, and butter mixture. No cheese, because the cheese is going to burn. Then I'm going to bake it for 30 minutes, and you might want to have an extra sheet tray handy and double pan it at the 20-minute mark. For those of you who bake a lot of coffee cakes, wreaths, challahs, you already know that double panning, something with this much surface area can often get too brown on the bottom. So be ready at that 20-25 minute point to double pan. When you order your pans, maybe you're stocking up for the holidays, make sure you have 2 commercial grade baking trays and your baking life will be so much more magical. All right, then when it's hot out of the oven, hit it with that butter again, and just to gild the lily, I sprinkled some nice fresh chopped Italian parsley on top. The whole inspiration for my cremona, taking it from that lard laminated dough, because we just don't have lard that's delicious like they have in Italy. As a matter of fact, they have leaf lard, which is pretty much off the charts as far as flavor goes. We don't have that. So butter, garlic, my inspiration, garlic knots. We all know how yummy garlic knot rolls are. So how about taking that idea and then weaving it into this classic cremona and making a beautiful celebration bread. So, any questions before? Oh, I went over time. Thank you so much for, you guys really like this. Really beautiful. I really appreciate the comments. Let me just grab, you know what I realized? I've been throwing it around. Oh my God, you have to see this. Look at that texture. Isn't that amazing? Oh, one more tip and then we're going to go, and thank you so much for joining me. Please join me next week, same time, same place. I have another tip for you. For something like this, it's a pretty good size. I baked it for 30 minutes, then I turned off the oven and I let it dry out for 5 minutes, timed, with the oven turned off. And it makes such a difference. So everyone, before we go, the layers are subtle, but they are there. Oh my God, I would give anything to have you all here so I could cut this up for you to taste it. It smells divine. No more questions. I just wanted to do one last look. Once again, thank you so much for joining me, and I look so forward to seeing you next week. If you have baking questions, please send them during the week, or that Friday post, that's another good place too. Happy baking, everyone. Maybe use this weekend to get your pantries and kitchens all set up for your fall and holiday baking. Happy baking! See you soon! Bye!